Yes, I assumed that everything I had done was moving the process along and we were getting closer to finding my perpetrator, including taking that DNA evidence that was in the rape kit to help find my perpetrator. I had no idea that that was not the case.
Welcome back. We are hearing all about the rape kit backlog, which kept one rape victim, Natasha Alizenko, here, waiting for justice for 15 years. Now, as you just heard from her, for an entire year after, detectives followed up with Natasha, asking if she remembered small details that they said might make a difference in cracking the case. But as you just heard Natasha say, none of that mattered, because the most critical piece of evidence, her own rape kit, which contained the attacker's DNA, was never even sent to the lab here for processing. So for 15 years, her attacker roamed free. And for 15 years, Natasha constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering if the creep who raped her would ever be caught. Tragically, as we found out through our investigation, this rape kit backlog is a common problem, not in one city, but across the country. And according to Human Rights Watch, anywhere between 200 and 500,000 untested rape kits are sitting in police storage facilities, as I said, coast to coast. Now, I want to bring in a reporter, Kim Lengel, who's enterprised the story from the get-go. And why, Kim, if it seems that I can't find anyone who thinks that it's a good idea for them to sit there gathering dust, why do so many, in fact, do just that?
Well, Rich, we assumed several things going into this, and several other things surprised us. One of the things we assumed is that in this tough economy, money had to play some sort of role, and it does. It costs about $1,000 to $1,200 to process a rape kit. That pays for both the manpower at the crime lab and the time and equipment it takes to analyze the DNA properly. We kept hearing over and over again that cost is a major factor in the rape kit backlog. But believe it or not, we also heard reasons that are even more troubling, reasons that have a lot to do with attitudes toward rape. And it turns out the way the laws are written, there's virtually nothing anyone can do about it.
I've certainly been told it's money issues. It's not only a matter of money, it's a matter of education and resources. Also, the one issue with rape kits is oftentimes police or prosecutors make the decision on whether or not a kit is to be tested. And that's a scary concept.
From the beginning of our investigation, it didn't seem right that some rape kits are tested and others are not. Victims certainly assume police are automatically processing the valuable DNA evidence and looking for the perp, but there could be at least 200,000 untested rape kits, just like these, which we acquired, sitting in police lockers right now that prove otherwise. We went to Lisa Friel for some answers. She's the former chief of the sex crimes unit in the New York City District Attorney's Office.
I'm a sex crimes prosecutor, so I think you should test every kit as quickly as technologically possible, which we are technologically capable of having an answer within a couple of weeks. What slows that down is money. And these different police departments have their budgets, and they get to make their decision on how they spend their budgets.
A recent report by the National Institute of Justice, the research arm of the U.S. Justice Department, said the exact numbers of unprocessed rape kits nationwide is not known, in part because of an antiquated process of reporting in many places. The survey found that 43% of law enforcement agencies don't have a computerized system for tracking forensic evidence. It also found that in 18% of the unsolved sexual assault cases between 2002 and 2007, forensic evidence was collected but never submitted for analysis.
I do think that they have a finite amount of resources and they have to spend it on a lot of things that need to get done by a police department. I frankly think the money needs to come from the federal government, that the federal government needs to decide that this is a domestic war that we have. We spend multi-millions, if not billions of dollars on foreign wars, and this is a domestic war against sexual assault.
It's a not very well kept secret among, experts in the field that law enforcement don't really do much with these kits.
Attorney Sarah Tofty is the director of policy for the Joyful Heart Foundation, a rape victims advocacy group. Tofty also worked for Human Rights Watch, and her research on the rape kits backlog put the issue in the national spotlight. Tofte's research found that anywhere between 200,000 and 500,000 untested rape kits are sitting in police storage facilities collecting dust.
We were hearing from sexual assault experts. We were hearing from the nurse examiners in the hospital. We were hearing from the sexual assault advocates who were working with victims in the criminal justice system. We were hearing from them that their sense was that these kits that were being collected were not getting tested, either because they had been told explicitly that by law enforcement in those cases, or especially from the nurses. What you'd hear a lot from the nurses is, if they'd done something with this kit, we should have heard back from the police, because at some point we're going to have to be called in to testify about chain of custody or testify about how we collected the kit. And they rarely heard from law enforcement. I talked to one nurse examiner who said she'd done at that point in her career about 500 sexual assault exams, and she never once heard back from law enforcement.
Tofte, like others, says the high cost of DNA analysis can be a factor for why rape kits go untested. Other times, she says, police officers take it upon themselves to pick and choose which kits get tested and which never do.
There would be some police officers who were suspect of certain people, and probably not as supportive.
Sexual assault nurse examiner of more than 30 years, Judy Specht says there were tough times dealing with police before Suffolk County cleared its rape kit backlog.
And I think initially sometimes patients would come in and may not present themselves the way that police suspected that someone should following a sexual assault, because they think there should be a certain presentation with people who have been assaulted, and they should come in screaming or yelling or something like you've seen on television, and if they don't, maybe it didn't happen. So there's, I think, initially a suspicion that she doesn't look like she was sexually assaulted. She's sitting in the corner eating M&Ms. She couldn't have been assaulted.
Some law enforcement say that DNA testing in sexual assault cases, in most cases, isn't worth anything. Other law enforcement won't test a rape kit because they don't think that a crime actually occurred, that they don't believe that the victim is credible. They think that the victim is lying to the police. And so, or they don't think that a jury or a prosecutor is going to believe the victim, and so they don't see any point in spending many resources on that case, and so they don't send those kits forward either.
Various studies completed over the last 30 years contributed to what is known today about police officers' attitudes towards rape. The body of work suggests that police officers are accepting of rape myths which are inherently misogynistic. For example, research shows that police officers tend to hold rape victims to a higher standard of evidence and decorum than they do other victims of crime, which means that police may put an extra burden on rape victims to prove their story. Researchers found that police have an image of an ideal rape and an ideal rape victim. All rapes and victims are compared to this ideal, which means it does in fact matter what kind of a woman claims she was raped. If a married woman claimed she was raped by her husband, 19% of police surveyed said they were unlikely to believe her, and 44% of police surveyed said they were unlikely to believe a prostitute who claimed she was raped. On the other hand, 95% of police surveyed said they would believe a virgin who reported rape, and 98% said they would believe a professional woman who claimed she was raped.
When you hear that anywhere from 200,000 to 500,000 kits sit around the country untested, kits, people aren't thinking, those are people. Those are real people. I think the country has to face the fact those are people, and people who have been victimized once by the assailant and now have no chance for justice if we don't test that kit.
Now, at this point, when rape victims find out about the backlog or they become aware that their kit may not have been tested, they often question why police are the ones who get to decide whether or not to test their rape kits. And the reality is the law is extremely clear on this. Victims actually have no say in whether or not their kit is tested. In fact, they don't have any legal right to learn what happened to the kit. Rich?
A lot of reasons you went into. I mean, also the dollars and cents. You know, police departments have had funding cut here. But of all the reasons why those kits are sitting on the shelves, what reason surprised you the most?
Many. Well, to hear the fact that if a woman says she was raped by her husband, she's the least likely for police to believe her story and get the kit tested. It defies logic, because you would think that if a victim can name their attacker, that would almost make it easier for police to justify.
I didn't know this until you reported it, but 2/3 of the women that are victims of sexual assault can actually identify their assailant.
Yeah,
so,
that's a huge
I mean,
percent.
I think you asked most people, I would have guessed it was the opposite, about 1/3 or even less.
Right, so the majority of the kits aren't getting tested because in many cases police don't believe them.
Unbelievable.